The purpose of Lubridate is to make working with dates and times easier in R. Lubridate can parse dates, manipulate dates, find instances of them, round them, work with time zones, work with durations between instants, measure periods, and work with time span intervals. In this video, we will be covering the basics on how to parse dates and date times, use time zones, and create and use date-time intervals. The YMD function takes in the year, month, and date in this format and outputs a date. Here, we get a date. We can also use the MDY or the DMY function to get the same result. For all of these, we can just do no spaces in between the numbers, dashes, or slashes, and we'll see here that all of these work and they all give us the same thing. To specify a date including the hours, minutes, and seconds, you can use the YMD HMS function. When specifying hours, know that they are in military time, so 16 represents 4 p.m. for example. So you have the date and the time. There you go. To specify a specific time zone for this date, specify the TZ option within the YMD HMS function. Now we'll see that the time zone is different than before. To extract information from dates, let's use our depart date example. First, let's try to extract the month from this date. So, use the month function on the depart date object. We can see that the month returned a numerical number 4 to represent April. To get the actual name of the month, specify label equals true within the month function. This is similar to get the weekday of our depart date. So here we get 3, and here we get Tuesday. These are all the other functions we can use to extract values from dates. Only the month and WDay functions have the optional label argument. Now looking at time zones. There are a few different ways in which to refer to time zones, but the preferred way is to refer to a time zone by location. For example, Europe/London. You can look up the names of the time zones by typing in $time zones into the R console. If I were wanting to watch a soccer game that is played in London and want to figure out what time that corresponds to here, you can do this by using the with TZ function, which takes in a date object as well as the time zone. Then it outputs the date and time in that new time zone. Since the game in London is 5:30 p.m., that time corresponds to 9:30 a.m. here in California. So I would have to wake up by 9:30 to be able to watch the game. We can force the time zone of a date-time object without changing the clock time by using the function forceTZ. Here, we are creating a new game time in Los Angeles by using forceTZ and inputting our game time date object and the new time zone. And here it's still 5:30 as it was in London before, but with the new time zone. Now looking at time intervals. With Lubridate, you can save intervals of dates as objects. You can do this by inputting 2 dates into the interval function. For example, I could save my spring break as an interval. Do this by using the start and end time of my spring break. And that's the interval of my spring break. Also, if I know my friend's spring break, I can create an interval for his and check if our spring breaks overlap. The function int_overlaps returns a Boolean value, true if our spring breaks overlap and false otherwise. Here's his spring break, and then our spring breaks do overlap. If we want to know the interval for which our spring breaks overlap, input 2 intervals into the intersect function to find the overlapping interval. Our spring breaks would then overlap from March 31st to April 2nd. If you want to learn more about using Lubridate, type $Lubridate into your console or look at the R documentation for Lubridate.